Resilience fatigue. I was literally on the wrong stream, like redoing a post from 2 weeks ago. Oops. Anyway, let me start over, please. Welcome to today's live. The plan today is to talk about this concept of, well, you can call it coping fatigue or resilience fatigue. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to coin this phrase yet, but I'll tell you, all it is you're just like, I can't take one more thing. I'm just done. Anybody with me on this? It's like, it just feels as we're going into the fifth wave. I just saw the news for like just the headlines because I try not to get too bogged down in it. But it looks like Quebec has put in pretty much a full lockdown. And I suspect Ontario may be pretty close behind, but who knows what they're going to do. And I think we just have to recognize that there's a lot of changes that we aren't even going to be aware are happening. So anyway, let's talk about how do we keep going no matter what. And, it's really interesting. Like resilience fatigue is, when you think about it, it's like, okay, so I've got all these challenges. I'm doing well because like most of us are quite resilient, like inherently we're resilient beings. And so we adapt and we figure out how to deal with it. And many of you are like incredible problem solvers and you just keep going and keep going and keep going. And then there comes a point where you've got your capacity and it's like so much stuff is jammed in there that if there's one more thing that goes into it, like you're out, right? Like you just can't keep doing it. And so what ends up happening is we end up with a shorter fuse. We can become more pessimistic. That can, of course, strain our relationships. When our relationships are strained, that's another obstacle that's in our way. That can influence our emotional well-being. And then, our mental well-being can come right after that, right? So whichever one comes first for you. But like, often if we're feeling low, then the stories that we're telling ourselves are going to get lower as well. And it can go the other way too. So I just think that if this is how you're feeling, then we have to interrupt the pattern. We got to give you some new strategies so that we can go forward in the midst of all this. So I would love to know, before I dive into the content that I have planned for you, if you are feeling this as well. And if you are, then let's talk about it. All right. I want to hear from you in the chat box. I'll bring it up. I'm just double checking because I did go in the wrong post, the wrong event to start this off. So it is working. It seems to be working. So we're good. Okay. And there are people watching, which is awesome too. All right. So the first thing I want to just unpack here is, if you haven't followed me for a long time and you're not familiar, you've never actually heard me give a speech or do one of my corporate workshops, then you may or may not be aware of my problem-solving framework. And we're going to use this today in a way because the thing is with the problem-solving framework, you can put it on any issue of the human experience can throw at us. So if you are a procrastinator, you can put the problem-solving framework on top of that and work through it to increase your likelihood of getting things done. If you are overwhelmed by your workload, you put the problem-solving framework on top of that, and you can get rid of your overwhelm. If you are a worrier, you get the point, right? And so today we're going to put that problem-solving framework on top of resilience fatigue or coping fatigue. You decide. You let me know what one you think sounds, more engaging, and then I will go from there. So the problem-solving framework looks like this, and I'm just going to switch my camera so you can see this. Situational awareness, self-awareness, solution activation. Now, so often when we are, I'm going to come back to this one. So often when we're talking about solving our problems, we immediately want to go to solution activation. So in the case of, resilience fatigue or coping fatigue, you might go to, okay, well, how do I do stress management techniques. So, okay, well, they say I need to exercise, I need to rest. And the truth is if you're caught up and you're so at the maximum capacity, you may not have any bandwidth left for actually adding those elements into your day to day. So the solution doesn't work. And so the reason I look at it this way is situational awareness is essentially we're trying to figure out what exactly is happening. No emotion, no like pure objectivity. Let's get clear on the one or many things that are happening in isolation. So a lot of times we'll say, okay, I'm just overwhelmed. And it's funny enough, the other night was feeling really just kind of down in the dumps. And I remember I was just like, oh, all these things. And I get a lot of obstacles in my life right now. And I get a lot of people in my life who have obstacles right now. And so I was just like, oh, this and this and this and this. And I was lumping it all together and emotionally responding to the whole. And so what did I do? I went, Allison, take your own advice, as I often do. I said, okay, what are the actual things, right? So I went through it, and I'm going to share this framework with you in a second, but I went through the problem solving framework and the supporting elements in order to bring myself out of that sensation of feeling it really in a funk and discouraged and overwhelmed and all those natural human emotions, and to empower me and to help me figure out a game plan in order to deal with as many of the obstacles as I possibly could. And so that's what I'm hoping for you. So we've got this solution, or we've got the situational awareness, self-awareness, solution activation. So the first thing I want to do is I want to share with you in the situational awareness element, a framework that if you haven't seen this can revolutionize how you show up for your life. And I know that sounds really, really dramatic. And let me tell you, it is. Because I know how powerful this thinking can be. Because a lot of times when we're feeling exhausted and we're feeling stressed, like all these words just sort of meld together. But the big word that comes over and is our overarching is stress. And I'm just so stressed. I can't take it anymore. I'm done. There's too many changes. There's too much going on. I mean, you fill in the blank of your own story or how you would show up for that. And I have a real issue with the word stress and how society has chosen to share, not share, how society has defined stress and allowed it to become this overarching concept that is a bit of a cop-out. So it's so easy to say things are stressed, right? Like that I'm stressed and, this is a really stressful situation, when in actual fact, a lot of our stress is manufactured. It's our biological reaction to the things that are swirling around us. And so people will say, well, you need to be resilient. I get that. Yes, that's half the answer for sure. But a better part of the answer is we need a better perspective and a better ability to solve the problems that are swirling around us so that we don't have the severity of the stress reaction. Okay, now let that sink in for a second, because that can be like, if you've heard me before, you'll know that's great. If you've done any different modalities, we'll sort of touch on this kind of a concept, stoicism and things like that. But essentially, it doesn't have to be that, deep. It really is just the fact that we got all this stuff happening around us. We get to choose how we respond to those things. And when we just call everything stress, what we end up doing is we disempower ourselves to ultimately minimize the destructive stress. So instead, what I found, and which is one of my main core concepts, is we need to change the words we use, the language that we use in describing our stress. And so the way I look at this is it's very much give me one sec. I'm going to get you a full slide here. I got to come up with my camera. Okay. So let's go here. Dun, 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 dun. By the way, oh, good. I've got this. We've got a note here from David. So let me pull him up before I do this slide, because I want to have room here for this. I know this is crazy, but when we came back from Mesa for Christmas, of course, now a COVID wave is coming. Of course, everyone was wondering, can we even get back? You know, I've realized there are things you can overcome and things you can't. The answer, I'm going to keep reading this. The answer for me is live one day at a time and think about what is important in your life. Material things are just things. I love that. You're absolutely right. And it's interesting because I will use travel as an example, because I think sometimes what happens is we're like, oh my God, what's going to, we're trying to predict the future. And the truth is your crystal ball is broken. So we only know what the facts are in this exact moment. And the more we're emotionally caught up and connected to what are the possibilities, the harder it is for us to actually lower our stress levels, right? So that's very good. Thank you very much for sharing that, that perspective. Okay, I am going to share with you this slide. This is how I like to look at my different tasks, obstacles, and adversities instead of using the word stress. And this is really critical because you need to know the difference of them, because these are the things that are causing us stress. And people will ask me, well, what about the people in our lives? Well, they could be, the people could fit into any one of these categories. So meaning you might have to do something for somebody. Well, that's a task. An obstacle, you might have to solve something that's happening with somebody. That's an obstacle. You might lose somebody or break up with somebody, and that's an adversity. Okay. So tasks, obstacles, and adversities. So from the situational awareness perspective, when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you are feeling like you are just like there's too much going on and you can't cope anymore, this concept of coping fatigue or resilience fatigue, I want you to go to a piece of paper, write out everything that is causing you stress, and categorize them into 3 different categories of tasks, obstacles, and adversities. So here's why this is important. Because if we just call it all stress, then what happens is we are somehow thinking that the same tools will help us deal with each one of those. But in actual fact, that's not true, because tasks we need to do. And when we're feeling overwhelmed, when we're feeling that resilience fatigue, we need to be able to do our tasks as effectively and efficiently as humanly possible, because otherwise they're going to steal much needed personal capacity from your day to day that you need to heal or grieve or, process or have the objectivity to solve the obstacles. See, it all feeds in together, but tasks are the things we need to do. No muss, no fuss, no drama, just get it done. Obstacles are the things we need to solve. Now, in order to solve obstacles effectively, we need to have the objectivity. Now, I'm not going to do the ice cube that became the snowman today, but that is a critical piece of this puzzle. So go watch a video on that for me, please. If you want to, learn more about this, obviously. Okay, so obstacles are things we need to solve. Adversities are things we need to heal from. We need the capacity to be able to do that. So another way to look at this is very much that it could be based on your level of control. Sarah, I see you're here. So awesome. I saw your note. Thanks for coming. Okay. So when it comes to control, and by the way, when I say control, I don't mean like controlling. I mean like a sense of peace and, you've got this, right? But when it comes to actual control, the adversities we have no control over. So you and I are not going to be able to influence whether or not they lock us down again, right? And especially in my world, in the events industry, like this whole aspect of like, can we, can't we, like meeting planners are booking, fully two streams of conferences, right? One completely virtual, one hybrid. Like, it's just, we can control the obstacles within that a little bit more, but we can't control if the government's going to pull the plug on us again or lock us down or whatever the regulations are. With obstacles, though, we have a medium to high level of control because we can explore different ways to solve the problems, and we can pull in other resources. Now, sometimes we're going to have to wait on other people, or there are other factors that are out of our control, etc. Whereas tasks are things we have a very, very high level of control over. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and you're just exhausted, but you still got to get your work done, you still got to show up and do the thing that matters, then we've got to get you so good at doing your tasks so that you can do them in a shorter period of time. And that may seem almost impossible because you're stuck in this pattern of this is how you do your work. I remember when I had my surgery, the nerve pain came when I woke up out of that surgery. And every second of every day for about 5 years, and I still have it, but it's not nearly as severe for the last, several years. Today it's been pretty high, but I digress. Anyway, the thing is that, what was I going to talk about here? Oh, with the task. So I went from working 18-hour days of being like just doing. And when you're in good health and when there's not something big, an adversity going on in your life, we can power through. Those of you who are like me, who we just get the job done and we keep working until the job is done. That's great. That's a great tool when things are going well. And when things are not going well and you have obstacles and adversities in your life, that pushing through on the task is a direct path to burnout. See what I'm saying? But when I had my surgery and my pain was so incredibly severe that I ended up working 2 to 5 hours of functionality a day. So I was on the couch for most of my life, or in bed, or, taking it easy with some friends who didn't mind me being in my pajamas, right? Or going to the movies. It was pretty, not sort of the life I would have chosen for myself, in fairness. But I was in so much pain that I had to maximize 2 to 5 hours of functionality. And here's the funny thing. I was more productive back then than I can be now if I'm not purposefully using my strategies and really being in flow. I was more productive then because I had a compressed time frame for getting the work done. And so if you're feeling coping fatigue right now and you are just like, I got so much shit to deal with, then we got to get your tasks so compressed so you can do them as efficiently and effectively as possible, because every time you take longer to do a task than needs to happen, you actually are stealing from your personal capacity. Okay, so that is something I just wanted to share with you as a concept, because I do believe that can, understanding that, and I mean, obviously that's just the little bit of a teaser on that, but I think that can really help you putting things into perspective. All right, so we're going to unpack your stress bucket. Is it a task? Is it an obstacle? Is it an adversity? What are the things about this issue that are within my control? Okay, and so I think I had shared earlier the other night when I was really feeling quite overwhelmed by all the obstacles I had to deal with. When I actually went to pen and paper, I was able to figure out, okay, these are not adversities, at least not yet. And then, here are the obstacles. What tasks and about what's within these things is within my control. But then what tasks can I take in order to move forward with the obstacles? Okay. And it gives you a sense of empowerment and focus that can really help you feel better in the midst of this. But one of the other reasons that we really want to unpack the stress bucket is because if you're feeling coping fatigue, then you really don't want to be coping with things that don't really require you to cope. Now, it might feel like you need to cope with them, but this is a little bit like don't sweat the small stuff on steroids. Okay, because if you are taking your tasks and you're getting all bent out about shape, about all the tasks you need to get done, you're just sort of adding capacity sucking drama in your life. And no judgment, just reality, just how it happens. These are the types of things that we do. So let's go into, so that's enough for situational awareness. Let's go into self-awareness. And this piece is really about how am I reacting to what's happening around me, and potentially how am I making it harder to deal with. So looking at your capacity and your decision that you no longer have capacity to cope and you're just exhausted and you're done, I'm going to challenge you to do an energy audit, a task audit, but also an energy audit. So figuring out, okay, what sorts of things are draining my energy? Where is my brain swirling to? What kind of storylines am I telling? Am I catastrophizing things? Am I trying to predict the future? Am I staying stuck in the past? All of these different questions. I've got a comment here from Liz. Oh, wow, this is good. Thank you. I always end up focusing on the healing from adversities, which often ends up just thinking about the adversities. Fair enough. You got to lean into those. When I know there are tasks hanging around making me feel so much worse, and sometimes the small ones too. Yeah, it's funny how if you just did them, it would be so much easier, right? Let me read the rest. When I know there are tasks hanging around making me feel so much worse, and sometimes small ones too, I wish I'd seen this 2 days ago. Well, I'm glad you saw it now, Liz, because you can move forward on using this. And see, what's really interesting about that model is that as a society, we tend to glorify and amplify the tasks, right? So we have a lot of emotional connection to that, the guilt. I got so much work to do, but I need to take time off. And this is even in the self-awareness piece of the puzzle, because if we're focusing on our tasks and having that emotional connection to tasks, and that is robbing our time and our freedom and our capacity to process the full adversities, we're actually not going to do either the task well, and we're definitely not going to be able to process and heal from the adversity. So as we go through the self-awareness piece, how am I responding to this? And because I'm someone who really used to have this drive, keep going, if you're going through hell, keep going attitude, I wouldn't take time off, right? It's why my book is called Take Back Your Weekends, right? Stress less, do more, be happier. Because if I took time off, I was so emotionally connected to the things I needed to get done that I wasn't actually enjoying the time off. And then as time would go on, as I was operating at my top personal capacity each day, my time off would be more of a collapse than it was a recharge. I don't know if you can relate to that in any way, but if we're collapsing on our days off, and that's why I say a day off won't fix the burnout issue that we have in our corporate cultures, in all of our cultures, forget corporate, in society. A day off is not the answer, because a day off becomes a collapse. We need to figure out, okay, how do we stop reacting and giving so much emotional and mental and physical energy to the tasks that don't deserve it? They just got to get done. No rigmarole, no fight, no, why didn't you take out the garbage? Like, just, right? Just as well as we can to make space for the other stuff. So that self-awareness, I think, is so, so critical to go into the emotions of it. If you're feeling this, like, what are the emotions that I'm feeling, and accepting them. And to Liz's point, like leaning into the emotions, right? If like emotions are energy in motion. So they need to have a time to feel the feels. And the next piece, though, is so critical, is we want to look at the storylines that you're creating around the situation. So if we're, let's say you're trying to get a job and you found the absolute perfect job for you, you've interviewed, and now you're waiting for the call to come in if it's going to happen. So now we start talking about the self-awareness piece is, am I pretending or am I creating a storyline that this is the only job for me, that this is the absolute perfect job? And if it doesn't come in, then I'm not going to be able to find one as good as this. When in actual fact, if it doesn't come in, we got to just get you going and looking for another job. Right. And like that, are you so emotionally caught up in the outcome? A lot of times when we're having this sense of coping fatigue, we're focusing on the way we want things to happen instead of embracing the journey of how we're going to get there. So part of the answer to this is detaching from the outcome. Christmas is a great example. I know all of us had, this vision of, we're 2 years into this pandemic. We're going to have great Christmases, be with our family again, and, our extended family. And that's not going to happen. But if we're emotionally attached and our storyline is attached to that outcome of, we want that thing and this is the way it needs to be in order for me to be happy, then no matter what happens, if you can't do that, then you're basically destined for being upset and sad. So instead, I would say it's like, okay, can't see the family. We could consider that an adversity for 2021 Christmas. I mean, it's not a true adversity, but it's very sad. And it is definitely, for those of us who have such a huge value towards family, something we're going to miss and be really, if we got to grieve the idea of not having that Christmas celebration again this year. And those memories that aren't made and all of that becomes in the adversity category where we need to heal. But then the obstacle is, okay, how do I make the most of this Christmas anyway? How do I allow myself to heal and grieve and process that disappointment while still maintaining the sense of peace so that I can be happy even so? Right? Like, this is the task, obstacle, adversity. And then what are the tasks that need to get done? Well, I've got to send, now I've got to ship via Canada Post. I got to send out all the gifts or whatever the case may be. Okay. So that can really help put things into perspective. I think one of the hardest things too, when we're feeling the sense of fatigue as it relates to all the stuff that's going on around us, is it can be really, really hard to see the good stuff. It can be really, really hard to feel gratitude. And I got to tell you, I have a very strong gratitude practice. I proactively choose to put joyful moments into each and every one of my days. And the other day when I was sort of swirling in the midst of, oh my God, this is a lot of obstacling that I've got to navigate right now, I was having trouble feeling gratitude, right? It was hard for me. And then I think, well, what about people who don't have a practice of gratitude? It's so baked into who I am at this point in my life. For me to have trouble doing it, I'm like, oh my God, what about people who don't even see gratitude on a day-to-day basis, who haven't proactively put that in? And it's so critical. Gratitude and silver lining thinking, right? And not power positive thinking, I'm going to deny the reality, but okay, maybe if I don't get this job, or I don't get this client, or I don't get this gig, or this, company has decided to push off our program for another 6 months, and I was counting on that cash flow, right? Well, yeah, but then that opens up my calendar for another client who desperately needs me in January. Right? Or if you're looking for a job and you don't get the one you want, then maybe that leaves you open for something where you can make an even bigger impact, something that you can't even imagine. Right? And keeping that, I'm not suggesting that it's very easy necessarily. It's definitely a lot easier when you've already baked the silver lining thinking and the optimism and the gratitude practice into your day-to-day life before you get to a point where you're burning out and feeling this resilience fatigue. But even so, you can proactively do it now. And so the other day I was like, I just don't want to feel gratitude right now. I'm done. And you know what? I sat with it, and then I was like, okay, problem solving framework. What's the situation? Okay, well, I'm sort of upset about this. And then, kind of went through it, self-awareness, and then solution activation. And ultimately I did I'm like, okay, well, find something that is really simple to be grateful for right now. And I did. And whenever I have to, I usually look to my dog, Winston, and he, brings me a little bit of joy. But I think we've got to make time in our day for that kind of stuff. And I mean, it takes 10 seconds. I'm not talking about sitting down and journaling for 2 hours, although not a bad idea if that would help you. So I think that is sort of what I wanted to share today. I mean, I have a whole bunch of other thoughts, but I also am aware of the timing here. And so just as a recap, the concept of coping fatigue, or as I said, resilience fatigue, is like you're just sick of having to deal with shit. That's it. And I get it, because there's a lot of external things, but plus our own lives. Like, let the government do what it's going to do. The COVID, all of that is just going to keep, going as a machine that we can't necessarily influence on the individual basis. But of the things that we can influence, the things that are causing us stress, what are the tasks? Can we do them better? Can we do them faster? Can we offload them? Can we stop doing them? I am actually going to encourage you to go look at my PDF that I posted on LinkedIn, which actually is about how do you have take the stress out of the season. So stress-free holidays. So we've got that with the obstacles. Really look at it and go, okay, I just got to solve that. I don't have to be emotionally attached to it. I got to fix it. And then allow yourself to feel the feels of the true adversities of the season and process that. And they all work together. And anyway, that's part of my full speech, but I wanted to give you a little teaser on this concept. Are there any questions? I know we've got a bunch of people watching, so I'm looking over at the Strats chat scene. So if you would like to have a look, if you would like to say anything, no? Okay, good. All right, well, I hope that's helpful. I hope if you are having coping fatigue that you will take some time off if you can, and if you can't, then just shift your perspective on what is happening around you and solve problems better and faster using that problem-solving framework and the thinking of it. So I hope that is going to help inspire you. Is there a way to tell when you hit burnout? Yes. Liz, it would be many, many different ways. Number one, you're just done. So actually here, I'm going to have you'll find yourself saying done, but let me find something specifically that I have that is going to help you. Okay. This is a really good question. So burnout, like I think by going through the definition of burnout, and this is actually from the World Health Organization, they at the beginning of the pandemic ultimately ended up, or I guess it was before the pandemic, ended up making it like an actual syndrome. But it's chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So if you're thinking from a perspective of, if let's say out of 5 days of the week, you would come home or maybe you're already at home, but finish your work, and you would say to one of your loved ones, they'd say, how was your day? And you'd be like awful or have a really negative word. I would consider that to be considered chronic workplace stress, right? It was really stressful. It was really tough. It was really difficult. It was really, you can put in your own words there, right? So want to look at it. So it's energy depletion or exhaustion beyond what your normal energy levels are. So for example, I have a chronic illness that causes my exhaustion. So I have to be really, and that plus my chronic pain. And so when I use that as a benchmark, it's really hard for me because I would feel exhaustion anyway. But what I find is it's taking me to that next level of exhaustion. And that's when I know I've got my stress levels are a little bit out of whack and I really have to get back on top of all of this stuff. I mean, obviously that doesn't happen a lot anymore because this is so ingrained in me, but it's definitely, I'm not immune to the human experience, right? There's a reason we create these concepts. This is another piece that can be really helpful to understand is a mental distance from one's job. So you're just not, you're like, not really interested. I don't really care about that client. God, I hate to ever say that. I've never said that. I care about every one of my clients. But you're just like dialing it in. It's good enough. That kind of attitude can be true. Can be leading to it. Feeling more negative is another piece of the puzzle. I remember actually one organization brought me in specifically because they noticed that the HR director noticed that the conversations had turned more pessimistic than was typical pre-pandemic. And so they were just like, you know what, the story, it's hard to find the optimism within the conversation. So that would be another indicator, I think, that you're heading towards burnout or in the burnout phase. And then, your reduced your professional efficacy. So, at the end of the day, are you dropping more balls than you would normally drop? And if you're starting to see that, then this would be a problem. Okay, good. I'm glad that works to know. It's something to look for. It's also something to look for with the people who you lead, other people in your family, looking for some of those signs. So now here's the frustrating part is because a lot of times when people talk about the burnout and they've got this sense of done and they're feeling all of this, the answer is I need to take a day off. And we talked about that a little earlier. It's not the answer. It's not going to fix burnout. Now it's going to help to get a day where you just sort of feel like, oh, I can relax. But it becomes more of a collapse than it does a recharge. And if we truly want to be able to, over the long term, minimize burnout, then we have to not just be resilient, that's half the answer, but we have to have a better perspective of all the things that are going on around us and causing us stress and be better problem solvers. This is my entire platform, the foundational thinking that drives all of my speaking and my training and, my book. I actually may end up writing another book using the problem solving framework and really going through this concept around coping fatigue. And I don't know, is resilience fatigue or coping fatigue sound better? Somebody let me know, please. I hope people understand what I mean by that. It's just, you're just done, right? David, thank you. Love it. I live by this and it definitely works. All right. Well, that makes me super, super happy. Yeah, it's, you create these concepts. I mean, of course, they all came through me for my own life, having to survive in that really difficult time. And then slowly started using it with my coaching clients and my friends. And then really building out now, having my full 10-week program for companies and books, etc. Okay, so Glenn saying, so resilience fatigue is better. There we go. We got the whole Heidi's there. She's saying coping fatigue better. Okay, great. And Jennifer saying coping. All right. Well, we'll stick with coping then. You're outvoted there, Glenn. That's great. Okay, well, listen, unless there are any other questions, I mean, Liz, you prompting that question was really great because I could go into a direction of sharing some ideas that I think will help people recognize when they're in burnout. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to stay around for a few more minutes. As you may have noticed that we're only doing one live week now on Mondays at 3:15 p.m. Eastern. Doesn't mean you won't be seeing content from me. I assure you, there's lots of stuff still coming in the works. It's just the live platform is hard for people to get to, and so I'm going to, do more prearranged videos and things like that. So anyway, I don't see any questions there anymore, so I will call that a day. I am super excited for each of you to, I hope if you celebrate Christmas like I do, I wish you an absolute wonderful holiday season, even if you're in a location where they've sort of shut us down in terms of seeing our extended families again. I hope some of these ideas that I put forward today will help you in that reality. And I can't wait to see you next week. I think I'll do one next week. Want to take the time off? I don't know. We'll play it by ear. But if not, I'll be back in the new year for sure with lots of stuff. And if you're leading a team and you're concerned that they are have coping fatigue, please recommend my name as a speaker. We can put together a program just for your team. I would love to do that. So have a beautiful day. And until next time, may you stress less, do more, and be happier. Bye for now.